This year marks Double Dragon's 30th anniversary. Normally I would do it close to that exact date, but because there is a new game coming out, Double Dragon 4, I decided to do it now. So let's start off with the original game, which debuted in arcades in July 1987. The plot follows the struggles of brothers Billy and Jimmy Lee after the evil Black Warriors gang who stole Billy's girlfriend Marion. Now, Double Dragon is a spiritual successor to an earlier game developed by Technos Japan, Renegade. It improved many features from Renegade, including co-op and being able to pick up weapons. Double Dragon is considered one of the earliest examples of a brawler or beat-em-up that popularized the genre. Due to its success, it was ported to too many consoles to cover in one retrospective, but some examples include the NES, Game Boy, Sega Master System, Atari 2600, and more. Most of these ports tried to emulate the arcade version, but due to limitations they were altered not only graphically, but with content as well. The only version closest to the original while adding new stages and remixed music is the 2003 Game Boy Advance title, Double Dragon Advance. For me, it's the best version of the game to play as far as one goes, although there's nothing quite like the nostalgia of the Nintendo game. Moving on to the next title, Double Dragon 2 The Revenge, which released in arcades in December 1988. It begins with the Black Warriors killing Marion, which even by today's game standards is a pretty bleak way to start a game. Mechanically, it's marginally better, but there's not much else to say on it. The interesting parts of this second iteration are its ports, namely the NES and Game Boy versions. They're both simply titled Double Dragon 2 and follow similar plot lines, but are considered their own games, sort of like parallel adventures. Technically, you could call every port from any of the arcade versions parallel titles due to, again, hardware limitations, but anyway, there's one other crazy outlier to Double Dragon 2, which is Double Dragon 2 Wander of the Dragons, which launched digitally for the Xbox 360 on April 5th, 2013. Essentially, it's a remake based on the arcade version with a lot of improvements, in quotes, although they weren't implemented well. It's the worst reviewed Double Dragon game out there, currently sitting at a 17 out of 100 on Metacritic from 19 official reviews, which is the second lowest reviewed game for the Xbox 360, next to Yaris, which is an advert game where players drive a Toyota Yaris. Despite this, it's still available on the Xbox Live Marketplace if you want to fork over $10, but I really wouldn't recommend it. As you're seeing now, I haven't really captured any footage because I didn't play the game myself on my own Xbox, but I did at a friend's when it came out, and we were both very, very disappointed. Anyway, let's move on to the third game, Double Dragon 3 The Rosetta Stone, which launched for arcades in November 1990. This is where the story sort of jumps the shark, where the brothers are trying to collect mystical stones around the world in order to fight Cleopatra. On top of that, it's one of the earliest examples of a pay-to-win model. Feeding real coins into the arcane unit could beef up your character. And more so than what I've previously said, but the NES version of this game, Double Dragon 3 The Sacred Stones, was a step beyond the usual rearranging. Yes, same essential plot revolving around stones, but the way in which you do it is quite different. In fact, Double Dragon 4 is based off of these events and not the originals, as the NES game is seen as the true successor. This is because Technos Japan was busy with other projects at the time, so East Technology developed the arcade unit, while this NES version was later created by Technos Japan. Thankfully, this is where things start to get a little easier to follow in terms of releases, starting with the debut of Super Double Dragon on, yes, you guessed it, the Super Nintendo in October 1992. Gameplay received a significant upgrade, including improved weapon animations, a guard and counter moveset, a special attack called Dragon Power, and Billy and Jimmy play differently. Plus, the 16-bit pixel sprites still look pretty great. Plot-wise, it dials back the supernatural for some good old butt-kicking of the Black Warriors. Nice upgrades, but it's really more of the same. The next two entries are fighting games based off of media properties. First, we have Double Dragon 5 The Dragon Falls, which launched on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis in 1994, and a year later for the Atari Jaguar, and is based on the American-made cartoon show. The other game, Double Dragon, released for the Neo Geo in 1995 and a year later for the PS1. Both versions were exclusive to Japan, even though it's based on the American-made film. And no, if you're curious, both media projects are not good, though the movie does have some campy goodness about it. In terms of what game is better, well, they're both pretty poor. Finally, the last original game released in the franchise was Double Dragon Neon, launched digitally on the PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2012, and for PCs 2 years later. It was developed by WayForward Technologies as sort of an over-the-top homage to the entire series with items to equip, new power-ups, and another wacky adventure similar to the supernatural stuff in the third game. It's probably the best game to play nowadays while still evoking that classic feeling of Double Dragon. And that's kind of about it. This was definitely one of the more taxing retrospectives to sort out due to all the ports, some of which being different games, but interesting to cover nonetheless. So if I missed anything, I apologize, but again, it's kind of hard to seek through a lot of this wreckage. It is quite confusing. On a closing note, I am curious how Double Dragon 4 will stack up. We'll see at the end of the month when it'll debut digitally for the PS4 and PC. For now, happy 30th anniversary Double Dragon for all your confusing glory. Did you know that was a ReActionExaminer video? If you liked it, you should subscribe to me to keep up with everything that I'm doing. Also, if you have some other interests, like sex for example, check out Tomops, which is a comedy sex podcast thing wherein my best friend and I check out the weird and abnormal and the erotic. And of course you should support me on Patreon because hey, I want to make the channel better and I want your help to do so. Plus, if you want to check out my writing, check out Game Jerk where I have archives and new stuff for all projects, okay? You can find all the stuff and more in the description with the links below. Thanks for watching and I will see you all next time.